Hi there, Janet Fritz here for Galaxy Girl Creations. Today's layout's doing triple duty with Mixed Media Frenzy, Scrapbooking from the Heart, and another episode of May I Scraplift You. Today I am scraplifting Julie Taylor from the Hey Little Magpie creative team, and this is an awesome piece that we were actually asked to scrapbook. It's our inspiration piece for the Mixed Media Frenzy Hop this month. So I am also calling it part of May I Scraplift You because it is a scraplift. And so what I did was I started out with some white mixed media paper. It's a really heavy paper, kind of like the Vicky Bouton foundation paper, but not the same brand. I actually don't know what brand this was. It was gifted to me from Laura over at City Scrapper. She gave it to me to try out. So I am enjoying trying it out, and I actually did gesso this paper because I knew I was going to be doing a lot of mixed media stuff on it. I wanted the opportunity to be able to lift some of the color and move it around. So I am using my palette of watercolors, and that is from Gonzai Tombi, and I know I always say that wrong, so it is from Amazon, and it runs around $40, maybe slightly less. And I have this really cute picture of Noah just giving a funny face. I think his mom said this is his "don't take a picture of me" look. And anyway, I thought it was really cute look on his face, so I wanted to make sure I scrapbooked it. And then since he's wearing a yellow shirt and he's wearing a blue baseball cap, I decided to work in the yellows and blues. And since I am using my watercolors on a paper that has been gessoed, anytime I get the yellow wet, it is kind of turning it into a teal kind of green color. And that's okay with me. I knew that was going to happen. If I didn't want that to happen, I need to use paper that is not gessoed so it doesn't pick up the color that I've already put down. It does help if the colors are fully dry. It doesn't mix quite as quickly, but since they are on gesso, anytime you reactivate them with water, it does mix. And so I decided to embrace that fact, and I pulled in some Dilutions spray in, let's see here, I believe that is Poisoned Jade. And so it's kind of that teal color. It's either Poisoned Jade or, my apologies, it could also be, what is this color? This color doesn't say right easily. Oh, Vibrant Turquoise. My apologies. So it's one of the two. I am going to say it's probably the Poison Jade. They're very, very close in color. One is just a tiny bit greener than the other. So I think it's coming together pretty good. It's kind of going to have like that a splotchy look. It's not going to look like the packaging technique at all because it doesn't soak directly into the paper, like I said, because of that gesso. And so it does allow me to move things around and kind of pick up some of the color if I don't want it as dark, and it does allow me to blend things if I want to. And then I do also pull in some of the Dilutions in London Blue because I know I want it to have a little bit more blue in it. And I'm just kind of playing around with it, getting it to where I like it. And this is kind of all just like the way that I learn with the watercolor stuff, is just to kind of play with it. The key is, if you're going to do something like this, especially on a paper that is gessoed and the colors are going to mix, choose colors that play well together. And what I mean by that is, if you look at a color wheel, choose things that would that are next to each other on the color wheel and that play well together. So if you take your primary colors and you mix them together, the red and blue make purple, those three colors together would work well. Yellow and blue make green, those three colors work together well. You can mix your secondary colors as well. You just have to know what plays well together. If you have a color wheel and you have colors that are directly across from each other on the color wheel, do not use those. That's what they call complementary colors. They look beautiful together, but they always make earth tones. And by earth tones, I mean mud. But I mean, those are definitely colors that you need, especially when you're doing landscape type watercolor and such, but in this application I don't want earth tones, so I don't want to use things that are directly across from each other on the color wheel. To get these really super light shades that I'm doing on the outside or the perimeter of the piece here, I am just adding a lot of water and only picking up a little bit of the paint. I'm not adding a lot of water to the actual paper. I am just rinsing out my brush well, leaving water in it, and only picking up a tiny bit of the paint, or water down your paint. That's how you get those lighter tones. And then I am going to sprinkle some splatters across it. So I do like how that's looking. And if you're wondering why I have everything taped down on this piece of whiteboard, I prefer to do that because I can set it aside and let it dry and it will go back to nearly flat. And I don't really like it when the pages are super warped in my album. And so I prefer to tape it down. And especially it's been gessoed, so it definitely has taken on plenty of moisture. Now the cardstock is not it is much thicker than cardstock, the paper that I'm using, so it's not going to warp as badly, but I still tape it down and wait for everything to completely dry before I move on. And so now I am using these 3 strips of paper and I am putting color on them to match what I've already done on my page, because if you see in the inspiration piece, she has these papers that are protruding from the back of the photograph, and so I want to create some papers that I can use for that same similar effect. And so I am just using that London blue. I'm using some yellow from the pan of watercolors, and then I am mixing up a little bit more of that teal color to create the green, and then I go ahead and splash a little bit of green onto the yellow and onto the blue, just so it doesn't look like it's just a solid blue strip of paper or a solid yellow strip of paper. Add a little bit of blue to the green one just to kind of give it a little more interest. And those are just plain old pieces of cardstock. There's nothing special about those. The water just wicks right into them, but they look great when they are completely done. So I have these stamps from 49th and Market, and they are a stitched stamp. They're called Gabby's Line Stitch Stamp, and they were designed by Gabrielle Polacco, if you know who she is on YouTube. She is quite popular in doing mixed media. And so I'm using one of those stamps to stamp down the center of each one of these pieces of paper, and the inspiration piece has some stitching on it, and I couldn't tell if it was a stamped image or if it actually had real stitching on it. Either way, it doesn't really matter. You get the same effect. And so in her inspiration piece, hers looked like they got more narrow as they went closer to the photo, so that's what I'm kind of doing. And I couldn't find my big black scissors at the time when I was doing this, so I pulled out a couple of different pairs of scissors. And then I'm distressing the edges to give some added texture, and see how that looks. And I don't make you sit through the entire process of me distressing, because that just takes quite a while. Now I decide I want some additional color over here on the right hand side, so I pull out the yellow Dilutions in Lemon Zest. It's not the exact match of the yellow that I used from the watercolor palette, but it is close enough, so I'm happy with that. And then I pulled out the same Dilutions that I used for the portion that's going right behind the photo, so that it brings in more of those colors to the right hand side. I'm happy with how that looks. I did bring in a little bit of Witch's Brew, or Witch's Blue, and it is part of its shimmers, and it's basically that darker color of blue that is in the main background. I just wanted to bring in a tad of that, and rather than pulling out my entire palette of watercolors, I just opened up a little bit of the shimmers, and it's only a tad that I brought in, so it looks like it's the same color. Now I do have this awesome stencil. This stencil is also from Gabrielle Polacco, and it's a 12 by 12 stencil. As you see there, it's made for the Crafters Workshop, and I'm trying to get the name of it for you because I really love this stencil. It is called Tile Mania, and the product number is TCW662, if that is something that is of interest to you. So I used that with some Nouveau Glimmer Paste in black, and I love the way that that turned out. Then I printed off some stars on my printer, and so I'm using those to kind of decide what size I want, and then to cut out some stars to put behind the photo. And I'm using this mixed media piece that I did back in December, just trying it out because it is all the same colors, and I'm thinking that that's what I'm going to go with, but I don't end up using it. So you will see me cut it out here and try it out. And I left some of this process in because I know a lot of times you guys like to see the process that helps us come to the decision that we make as to why we use what we use. And so I did leave this part in just so you can kind of see that it doesn't always go the way you think it's going to go right at the beginning. So I kind of like how that looked, but then I had those 3 pieces of paper, and I decided to ink up the star, thinking that's going to kind of mute it down just a tiny bit. I like how it looks with the inking on it and everything, but when I add the 3 papers, it was too much. It was just too much. Sometimes you just have to dial it back a little bit, and that is what I was feeling in this particular case. And there was just too much color. It was just, yeah. So I decided not to use the star. I am going to do something different. And then the pieces of paper, I tried using them in different kind of formats, like different ways, and I didn't like that. It kind of looked like a turkey tail to me. So I kind of moved things around. And then I decided that they were a little bit too wide. And so I trimmed those down and I distressed them again. And I don't make you sit through that entire process, but that is what happened. And then I inked them up with black. You're going to see me start inking them. I'm not going to make you sit through the entire process of that either. But that is what happened, and I really like how that looks. It's much better. There they are, all inked. I also, if you notice, I cut them at different angles, so that kind of helps as well. So I'm liking that a lot better. So then I need to go back and figure out what I'm going to do for my stars. And so I take some black paper, and then I use some of the London Blue shimmer spray from Dylusions. It's the same exact blue, but it has shimmer to it, and it always works on black paper, and I love how it looks. And I might have stopped right with this color and not added some Nouveau to it, but I do end up adding Nouveau. I still like how it looks, but I might have stopped there if I had thought about it in advance, because the Nouveau has so much silver in it, it really just changes the whole look of everything. So I don't know. In retrospect, I maybe should have stopped where I was, but I don't know. It still looks good, and I'm pretty happy with the way that it turned out. And then I take that same stencil and I use some Nouveau Glacier Paste in yellow. I'm sure it's not called yellow. It's probably got some other name for it. Pineapple Delight is what it's called. And I put that over it. Now the colors behind were not completely dry, so they did bleed into the yellow. And so some of it has kind of like that teal look to it because the yellow mixed with the kind of the bluish color there, or the teal of the Nouveau. And so it just kind of made it match the background a little bit more. But I like how this looks better than the other stars that I had used because these have a black background, so they're a lot more bold, and they stand out more. So I'm much happier with how these are looking. So I do have a stamp set by Art by Marlene from Studio Light. That is this big polka dot. It's like a random dot. And I am using the Daydream ink from Catherine Pooler. And I'm just stamping that on the background around each side of the photo, and I am going to put some at the top and the bottom, and basically in all the embellishment areas. And then I'm using this paper from Amy Tangerine's New Bold and Brave, and I am just going to roughly make a photo mat, it's not perfect, and that's okay. And I feel like with mixed media like this, it doesn't have to be perfect because everything on the page is not perfect. So I just have the black, it has a white border. The photo is already printed with a white border. Then I added black, and then I added the Amy Tangerine paper. And I like how this is coming together so far, and it's making me a lot happier. And I did not worry about whether my papers are in the same orientation, like the yellow didn't have to be in the middle on both the top or the bottom. It didn't matter to me. They look fine how they are. And then making sure everything adheres well is important, because with mixed media, things don't always like to stay. So I put a lot of adhesive from my tape runner, and then I do end up using some liquid adhesive to make sure everything sticks down. Now this one star I am going to pop up onto some foam tape, and that is the star that is on top of the photo. And so I think that it needs a little bit of dimension, because there's not a lot of things that are popped up or dimensional on this layout at this point. And then I'm just going to add adhesive to everything and go ahead and stick it down so that it stays put. If you are new to Mixed Media Frenzy, it is a hop that we do at the end of the month. It's the last Friday of the month, every month, and there's a different inspiration piece each month. And there's a whole list of people playing along down below in my description box, so you can check them out. If you're wondering what just happened there, I dropped the Daydream ink face down on my photo, which didn't bother me that it's on the photo because it was printed on my selfie printer, which is easy to wipe off, but it also hit the top of the layout. So luckily it's mixed media. I just used my baby wipe and kind of smudged it in, and it looks fine. And then I have this stamp that is a half of a star outline, and the other half has dots, and that is from not Stampin' Up, Close to My Heart, and it's an older set. I got it from someone else. It was not something I purchased, and so I don't really know if it's even available anymore, but I used the Daydream ink to stamp that underneath the stars, and then it had these little tiny stars, so I stamped those in black, and I like how that's looking. Now when I add this last star on the right hand side, I do end up covering up one of those two little stars that I had just stamped, so I'm going to go ahead and stamp another one. And I'm just trying to figure out the orientation there, because I don't want it lined up exactly with the right hand side of the paper, but I do want it kind of falling off of the edge. So just add a few more of these little black stamps. And then my title, I decided to use this piece that says Strike a Pose. It's an acrylic piece, and I'm changing the color of it with one of my Copic markers. And I tried this turquoise teal color, but it wasn't really bold enough. So then I went to black with a Sharpie, and I actually really like how that looks in retrospect. And maybe I might go back and change it. I'm not really sure. But at the time when I was doing it, it looks really good right there, actually. At the time when I was doing it, I wasn't really fond of it. I just felt like it was kind of too much bridging the gap over on the right-hand side. And so I end up changing the color again. I actually bring in another star, trying to figure out if I need to kind of fill the gap right above where it says Pose. But I end up changing the color again to yellow, and the way to do that is I just dump a bunch of alcohol on it and wipe it off, because both Copics and Sharpies are alcohol markers, and you can just clean everything off with the alcohol. So while I do that, I will tell you a little bit about Scrapbook Your Joy, which is a monthly series that I am doing. It is more heavily journaling based, which I realize this doesn't have a lot of journaling on it, but I'm going to do a bunch of journaling on the back, and it's going to be just a letter to Noah about how much joy he brings to me and how much I enjoy spending time with him, all the little things I love watching him learn and do, and all of the funny things he says and the funny faces he makes just bring me so much joy. And that is our theme this month for Scrapbooking from the Heart. And so this is something that we do on the 28th of each month. And so come back next month and check it out and see what we are doing next month. There is going to be a list of everyone in my description box down below that is playing along with Scrapbook Your Joy, and then also a list of everyone who's playing along with May I Scraplift You. So I chose to use this as my scrap lift for May I Scraplift You. This is actually doing triple duty for all 3 of those hops. And that's not something I always do, but I felt like I've done a layout every single day this month, so I kind of needed a little bit of a break. Instead of doing 3 in a day, I just did 1 and made it fit for 3. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Check out everyone playing along below with all 3. Give everyone a little bit of love. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have questions or comments, you can leave them in the box below, and I'll get back to you. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye.